I wonder today, is your life filled with grace? Does that characterize your life today? That because you are a citizen of heaven, do you live a life of grace? Secondly, Paul reminds us and tells us that to be a citizen of heaven means that we live a life of perseverance. Of perseverance. Look at what he says. Now remember, Paul's in jail. And so he says, only let your manner of life be worthy of the gospel of Christ, so that whether I come and see you, if I'm released from prison and can come and see you, or I'm absent, I'm still stuck in jail, I may hear of you that you are standing firm in one spirit. That you're standing firm in one spirit. Do you realize, listen, do you realize that the greatest spiritual battle that we are in as believers, that the greatest spiritual battle that we are in as believers is the battle just to stand firm? To not give up. To not turn our backs on Christ. Paul put it this way when he was writing to the Ephesians and to the church at Ephesus in Ephesians chapter 6. When he talks about the full armor of God, listen to how many times he says to stand. He says, finally, be strong in the Lord and in the strength of His might. Ephesians 6:10. Put on the whole armor of God that you may be able to stand against the schemes of the devil. For we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the cosmic powers of this present darkness, against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly places. Therefore, take up the whole armor of God, that you may be able to stand in the evil day, and having done all, then stand firm in the gospel. And then he begins verse 14 with the word, and then stand. That what we are called to do as believers is to just keep standing in the faith when everything else is turned upside down around us. Some people would say, is that all? And when you say that, what I hear is, you haven't gone through too many trials before. That your faith has not really been tested yet, because believe me, there are circumstances in life, there are things that are going to happen to you as a believer that the easiest thing to do is just to walk away and to say it's not true anymore. Listen, there are many preachers out there who will tell you that coming to Christ means all your problems go away and that you're going to have a life of ease. And that's not true. Because I'm not greater than my master. When Jesus walked this earth, He lived a life of trials and tribulations. And all the time there was something happening. Something coming against Him until He was crucified. Times, listen, that the easiest thing to do is just to say, to walk away. I know that from experience. That the easiest path to take would be for me just to say, forget it. It's not worth it. This is too difficult. Yet God says, I'm to persevere. That my battle is to stand firm, and not to give up. But notice what he says. He says, stand firm in one spirit. That is, he's writing to the church. He's writing to a group of people. And he's saying, listen, your perseverance is in one spirit. That is, listen, we need each other to encourage one another. That's what the author of Hebrews says. He says, do not forsake the the meeting together of yourselves, but continue to come together as the days of tribulation approach. That is, we need each other to encourage one another to keep standing together. We need that person to walk beside us and say, listen, I know it's tough. I'm praying for you. We don't listen. Can I tell you something? We don't need people to make light of our situation and say it's all right. It's all right. As if what we're going through is nothing. You ever had that happen to you? Well, and it's well-meaning people. Don't get me wrong. Well-meaning people, because they don't know what to say. They just want you to forget your problems. Listen, standing firm in the gospel is standing firm despite your problems. And you need somebody around you to say, yes, it is tough, but God's still there. And I'm praying for you, and I will stand with you. We stand firm in one spirit. That to be a citizen of heaven is one who perseveres. In fact, if you look at the book of Revelation, Jesus tells to churches over and over, he says this, to him who overcomes, I will give. To him who overcomes, I will give. To him who overcomes, I will give that crown. We stand firm in one spirit to the end. That's a mark of a citizen of heaven, is one who doesn't give up, but keeps on keeping on. But not only are we to live a life of perseverance, we're to live a life of love. To live a life of love. Look at what he says. He says, standing firm in one spirit, verse 27, with one mind, striving what? Side by side for the faith of the gospel. That is, he's called us to walk side by side in love for the faith of the gospel. That is, the church needs to walk together. It needs to walk together, and the only way we can do that is when we love one another. But can I tell you something? What happens too often? Too often we don't walk together. Too often there's a group of Christians walking up here, and we leave stragglers behind. We don't stop and encourage them, and sometimes we leave our wounded behind. We don't pick them up and carry them. Because sometimes in the Christian life, it's hard to walk anymore, and we need somebody to carry us. But we leave them behind. Too often, listen, in the Christian life, it's not the people out there that hurt us. We get shot in the back. And Paul says that's not the way it's supposed to be. We're to walk side by side, holding on to one another for the faith of the gospel. And that's exactly what Jesus said. Jesus said this. He said, by this all people will know that you're my disciples, by your right doctrine, by your good works, by your fancy buildings. By this all men will know you're my disciples, by your love one for another. In John 17, Jesus prayed. He said, may they be one, Father, as you and I are one, so that the world may know that you've sent me and love them even as you've loved me. Francis Schaeffer, who's one of my heroes of the faith, said that love that we have for one another needs to go beyond just talk and theory. It needs to be so real that it can be seen. And he says, how do we do this? He says this, 1, when I have failed to love my Christian brother, I go to him and say, I'm sorry. That is first. It may seem a letdown that the first thing we speak of should be so simple, but if you think it is easy, you've never tried to practice it. If you think it's easy to go to your brother and say, I'm sorry, you've never practiced it. Because most of the time our pride gets in the way and we say, it wasn't my fault, it was them. And then he says, 2, how can we demonstrate our love? Not only by when we fail our brothers, going to them and saying, I'm sorry. He says, 2, there must also be open forgiveness. And though it is hard to say, I'm sorry, it's even harder to forgive. The Bible, however, makes plain that the world must observe a forgiving spirit in the midst of God's people. That is, yes, it's difficult at times for us to say, I'm sorry, because our pride gets in the way, but it's even more difficult for us to truly forgive others, because we say things like this, I'll forgive them, but I'll never forget. You see, forgiveness is allowing a person back into my life even though they've hurt me, and I'm going to walk with them even though they've let me down. Again, our pride gets in the way and we're not able to do that. Listen, River Rock, and listen, people of God. I've said this time and time again. We are all under construction. God is not done with us yet. We will, and I will guarantee you, I will let you down at times. I will not meet up to your expectations. And when I knowingly have hurt you, I will come to you and ask you to forgive me and to tell you I'm sorry. But when I do, you need to forgive me. And I'll do the same for you. For listen what else Francis Schaeffer says. He said, does the world observe that we say I'm sorry? And do they observe a forgiving heart? Let me repeat, our love will not be perfect, but it must be substantial enough for the world to be able to observe it, or it does not fit into the structure of John 13 and 17, which is what I said, by this all men love will know that you're my disciples, by your love, and that we might be one. And if the world, listen, and if the world does not observe this among true